Hello, this is Brandon, and I want to welcome you to the Tansson Talk Show, where our mission here every week is to help bring people together. Going into episode 76, I'm just so excited to continue on this mission by inviting my guest here today, Kay. Welcome so much to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Just ready to have a great conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you as well. And so, first of all, how are you doing thus far today?
I could not be doing any better. I'm doing phenomenal. Just excited, really excited. We don't usually have the opportunity to speak a lot, but I think we're going to have a really great conversation.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for this conversation as well. And so, Kay, if you're able to go ahead and give us, a little bit about yourself before we go ahead and get started with our discussion.
Yeah, sure. I'll do a brief synopsis of who I am. So, my name is Keshav Vermani. Most people call me Kay. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was a graduate of First Colonial High School, and I went to this legal studies academy and studied kind of a legal education, really motivated to become a lawyer or to work in finance or banking or pretty much most corporate industries. I think that's what my personality is most suited to. So, came to Old Dominion initially to become a computer science major, realized that's not necessarily what I wanted to do, nor what I had a passion to do, and realized that I really loved to serve. I really was motivated to understand people's problems and try to solve them as best that I could. And so within a few weeks of being on ODU's campus, I attempted to be the speaker of the ODU Senate. I won that race. And then just worked with everybody in the Student Government Association to really help push the needle forward for the students of Old Dominion, and then continued my work as the student representative to the Board of Visitors at ODU. And that's where I am right now. Just finished that off about 2 weeks ago. And yeah, now I'm having this wonderful conversation with you.
I love that. And like I said, I'm just so excited, like I said, to get into this conversation. So I actually wanted to start back at the beginning. And so, yeah, I know you mentioned that you had, graduated high school from, from First Colonial, and that the program was geared more towards like, legal studies, and corporate settings. And so for you, was that, did you want to go there for that school, or was that the school you were going to go to anyway?
I think for me, initially, I was zoned for Cox High School, which is like about half a mile down the road. So it's not really, there's no big cultural differences in the school. Essentially, the kids you go to school with at Cox are almost exactly the same as the kids you go to school with at First Colonial. But I think for me, I always kind of wanted something different. I didn't necessarily want to be like a normal class. I wanted something a little more geared to my interests. And for me, I really liked the Legal Studies Academy because it was something where communication and passion and writing and debating and talking, that was the central component of your education, right? So whether one of your projects could be, give a 2-minute speech about why oranges are better than apples. And to me, that seemed like the best education ever. Like the best way to do anything was to actually do the thing that you loved.
Yeah, I love that, and I like how you mentioned, highlight to not just the communication, but also the debate and the projects, and so for you, what I found interesting from your introduction though is that even though you were part of that Legal Studies Academy, is that you had left there but wanted to do computer science though originally at ODU.
Yeah, I think for me, there was a time period in the world where we thought that anybody that could become a computer science major was going to leave, enter the workforce, and then automatically become some type of multimillionaire or billionaire. And for me, it's being young and being from the suburbs, I'm very easily impressionable. I think most people are, even if you don't admit it. And so initially I was like, oh, but maybe this computer science thing would be really fun. And then you do it and you're like, no offense to anyone that is a computer science major. It's not fun. Not fun at all for me. Didn't align with the type of person that I am and the personality that I have. Maybe it was someone's dream, but I knew it wasn't mine. And it's kind of good because this directly corresponded with the evolution of large learning models and artificial intelligence. So pretty much lower end coders and software engineers were already going to get displaced and replaced. And for me, it worked out perfectly where, sometimes life meets you at a point where you need to switch and change directions, and totally change directions from there.
That makes perfect sense, and yeah, and you definitely explained that quite well. And so because you of course wanted to go into that originally though, and I know you mentioned that it was somewhat of a passion, but not really your passion, and I thought that was definitely very powerful, especially for, I know a lot of people going into college, like they might be doing a little bit of like what their teacher wanted them to do, or maybe what their guidance counselor, their parents, or maybe just a small interest, but it might not quite be 100% their genuine passion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the reason why passion is important is because if you come out of, let's say, a 4 year program and you're miserable, and a lot of people are definitely miserable, or they don't love what they do. And when I say love, love, I think sometimes we call like a very fleeting quality. Like, like I love to hang out with my friends. That's not what the love of work is. It's would I do it for free, right? I mean, I don't know, Brandon, I don't know how much money you make from this podcast, but it seems a lot of it is very passion driven, right? And so, based off of that, if that's something you do for free, then absolutely it's something you love. But also, the reason why you do the things you love is because at the end of it, it's about the experience itself. There's no result. If there is no result, then it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah, I 100% get that too, and I think that's just such an important important note about that, because I feel like if we don't follow our passions, then how are we going to be able to continue with it further or add to it? Because at least for me, I always feel like for all my passions, like in organizations I'm part of, like I don't just want to be a passive member. I want to be able to contribute to it, to add more, make it a little bit better than when I started.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're so right because let's say, Brandon, hypothetically speaking, I told you that Tansson Talks becomes the number one podcast in the world, and you're getting money thrown out at you constantly, getting every sponsorship you can imagine, from Apple to Google to like Snapple, any company you can think of, you have the money from them. But without the experience to get you there, without the life lessons that you had to learn, without the ups and downs, who cares? Like really, who cares? Like money's cool, it is. It's like it's an amazing thing, but the passion that leads you to it, right, is probably the most important part of it, right? That journey that takes you from A to B, that's a chunk of the greatest stuff, right? That's why you do it.
That is absolutely true. And and I guess I did have to, since you're speaking about your journey, I did have to ask too, was ODU always your first choice, or was that a choice that came later down the line?
I think for me, life sometimes forces you into certain directions. ODU was I what I think we have to be honest with ourselves. It wasn't my first choice, and I'll be honest. For a lot of people, I don't think it is their first choice. And I think for a lot of people, they'd rather be somewhere else. But the greatest thing you learn about life is intelligence is the ability to adapt to your circumstances. And for me, I had the opportunity to either go to William and Mary or ODU. I don't. I'm very transparent. I don't love William and Mary's culture. I think it's a little too aggressive for an 18-year-old to be studying 19 hours a day. I think they have a lot of issues when it comes to mental health awareness and their ability to prevent those issues. And I thought ODU was just the safer option for me. I could grow into it a little better. And what I liked about Old Dominion is, even though it wasn't the school I was planning on attending or the school I necessarily wanted to go to, I learned so much about the world, like so much about the world, in a place that I really didn't think I'd learn much.
I really like the way that I mean, that you just conveyed that, and that you weren't really expecting much, but yet you were able to learn from it and hopefully grow as a person as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you go like your freshman class at ODU is not a normal freshman class, right? So if we go to Virginia Tech or we go to UVA or we go to William and Mary, the freshman class there is a very ordinary, you got your valedictorians, you got some kids that you're wondering how did they get into this school, but somehow they did. And then you just have like a normal mixture of like really smart kids. They had 4.0 GPAs, they took a bunch of AP classes, but that's not really, because that's the norm nowadays, that's not an extraordinary class, right? But when you go to ODU, you realize you're like, wow, like I'm in a class with like a former Navy SEAL and then a mother who has two kids and trying to balance life and college and whatever and in her job, and then it's you, and then it's a bunch of NATO kids, and then a bunch of kids that got scholarships from California, and you're like, wow, this is what life is, right? Life is a hodgepodge of people from all over the place trying to figure it out.
I mean, that really is so true. I mean, it definitely speaks to the culture, and I think amazing culture. I mean, of the of the university, and that you're able to. I mean, I feel like you sort of learn from each other, especially if you go and try to meet people and ask questions, and not just be just another person in the classroom.
Yeah, I would say for the most part, what ODU teaches you more than the academics, because academically speaking, you learn pretty much the same stuff at every school. The rigor, it may be questionable due to just like your class size and the competition, but you're learning the same stuff. Mechanical engineering at ODU is the same mechanical engineering everywhere else in the world. But when it comes to the things that you learn that are outside of that, right? Those non-technical and applicable skills, the soft skills that to learn, the people that you meet. Maybe I think for me it was a softening of the ego that I probably needed. Because if I'd gone to a college like William and Mary or UVA to begin with, I think I would have had a hard time to sympathize and empathize with people in different situations. Whereas ODU, because you're kind of forced to deal with different circumstances every day, you have to understand people at a greater level.
Yeah, I mean that definitely is true. And yeah, and how was the adjustment period like with, going to yeah, I mean to going to ODU and for you trying to to adjust to everything after after leaving high school.
So for high school, it was weird because the high school I went to, like the academy process in Virginia Beach is a very affluent community, right? So people have resources to get wherever they want to go in life. They want to go to UVA's, or they want to go to Virginia Tech's, or they want to go to. My class had two kids that went to Ivy schools, right? So when you go from an environment like that, which is very hyper competitive, and then you go to a school like ODU, which is, I'd say, not as competitive but still has competitive qualities, it's an adjustment. And the biggest adjustment came in the fact that I kind of had this ability to relax. I was able to kind of like take it, like I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I did everything because I wanted to do it, not because I felt compelled to. And I think that's an important experience in life, is realizing, am I doing the things I'm doing because I'm trying to do it for someone else, to impress someone else, who really at the end of the day doesn't probably matter that much? Or am I doing it for me? Right. And when you have that, it's a nice thing to do because you get to figure out what you want to do in life.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I said, yeah, understand that. And I mean, and I think that's just, I mean, true part of, sort of finding out who you are as well and trying to explore from there.
Yeah, I mean, for you, you graduated. Did you graduate in December? Did you graduate in May?
So I graduated from undergrad in December 2022 and then from my master's degree in May of 2024.
Okay, so you got your master's in, was it communications or digital art
Yeah,
or?
lifespan and digital communication.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. But throughout that process, right? So you were in college now. Was it the 6 year period, the four and the two?
Actually, I did it for a total of 4 years. I finished high school in 2020.
Okay, okay, awesome. Okay, so you really fast tracked the process. Okay, that's great. That's really great. But through that process, right, you may have come in as a freshman thinking A, and then somehow you leave thinking Y, and it's like, how did this happen, right? How did this massive influx of things that I would have never experienced happen? It's because you're not at home anymore. Like I'm close. I live in Virginia Beach. I'm at home right now. It's 45 minutes away, but it's a totally different environment. It totally different, and it shapes you and molds you into something that I think you would never imagine a school being an hour away doing to you.
Yeah, that is so true. And even for myself, having done everything, through distance learning myself, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, there's just a part of I mean, just the culture and the education, especially since my master's program was very tight knit, is that like, I feel like we just all learn from each other. And it's a different mindset than just, me being here just, at home versus, me working on my studies and being a part and immersed within the university. And it's hard to really explain, like explain that difference because physically, yes, it's the same spot, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's sort of like a different mindset that you have to use to go into it and a different form of discipline.
Yeah, and this is kind of like maybe a shift that I'm thinking about is when we talk about ODU and we talk about where a lot of alumni go, a lot of them go to some great places. But we notice that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I believe, is that ODU very much has like a regional niche to it, right? That a lot of ODU graduates likely, very likely, not all the time, will stay in the 757. They will stay in Hampton Roads. They'll go work at the shipyard, or they'll go work for ADP, or they'll work in Norfolk or Virginia Beach. And I think that brings about a different type of education, a very different type of education than somebody that goes to, a Cornell, right? Cornell's a good school. It's not the best Ivy. upstate New York, but nobody's going to stay in Ithaca, New York. No, nothing against upstate New York, but if you just graduated, you're not going to stay in upstate New York. But at ODU, people graduate and then they move 20 feet to the left at Huntington Ingalls, or 20 feet to the right at ADP, or they go work somewhere else. So I think when you have that environment, it's both a good and I'd say sometimes a bad thing, because once is you have this sense of like, oh, like this is my community, but also sometimes comfort is a little bit distressing when you're like, maybe I don't want to be here forever, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and something I had actually mentioned in a podcast with a fellow, student as well, I believe back in October, is that, and my thought is, when you come into the university, it's just like I feel like you will go as far as you want to go, and 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 I say that too in the sense of if you go in and you want to accomplish everything, you're going to do everything in your power to do that. But
Oh, for sure.
but the same
Yeah.
regard too is that if you go in just because I just need an education and I don't want to do anything, then that's sort of how you're leaving out. And I know some different universities, like they have certain cultures that push you one way or the other. Whereas I feel like ODU is very much I'm going to meet you where you are and help you out with whatever goal you had set out. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's not, yeah, and sometimes for some people's goals, just I want to use this as a stepping stone for the next thing.
Yeah. And that's an important thing that you talked about as a stepping stone. But more importantly, you talked about you control your own destiny, which is true. It's true to the degree that you, on a daily basis, are the only thing that you can control. Every day, the time you wake up, how you drive your car, where you're going, who you hang around with, what you drink, what you eat, how much you work, right? Like those are pretty much the only things you can control. Everything else is pretty much out of your control. So ODU is very good at understanding that if you do certain things and you do them very well and you do them consistently, you can be a like top ranking student. And it's not going to be some type of chance or externality. But I also think you're right. Like if you don't, like it's very easy to be like, no, I'm just not going to do it, right? It's very easy to do that, and we know that with the statistics and figures that show that a large amount of ODU student body is not performing well academically. And I think that's what the school has been trying to change, is only bringing in students who are serious about getting a college education. Um, but for the most part, I think ODU is doing every year. ODU just does better and better with improving the academic standards of the college, and I think it's going to get to a point where ODU, from a 90% acceptance rate, is probably going to scale back, maybe 70, maybe 60, because also the threshold of people that should go to college, who are serious about going to college, is decreasing. Right? There's other industries that are becoming more popular without a college degree.
Yeah, I definitely think there's just so many options, especially now in 2024, and yeah, and even for instance, for those who might go into trade, especially like for cybersecurity trade, is that the university, they have resources for that for even people who aren't degree seeking, they just want, for instance, a trade. And so I feel like it's important to to be adaptable and to not just have just the one thing, just oh well, we only have a 4 year degree, like to be able to go more than that. And like you said, the university definitely is growing, and now we're of course R1 research institution as well.
Yeah, I'd say with the newfound status of an R1 research institution, I think it definitely helps a lot when you're trying to get grant money from the federal government or any other type of nonprofit or profit seeking institution. I think ODU has done a lot to improve itself in so many ways that I don't even think if we had like 5 hours, we could explain how much improvements they've made. But from a simple, like normal standard, cutting acceptance rates to make sure that we're really getting high quality students, increasing the bar of merit based scholarship recipiency. So now there's students who do get full rides, specifically valedictorians from local 757 high schools. And then most of all, it's making sure that we kind of like make sure that kids that need to find a niche have a niche. So whether or not it's the Perry's Honors College or the Spectrum housing or different types of housing for engineers or artists or whatever it may be, people have the resources they need to be comfortable at ODU. Whereas I think maybe a decade ago, ODU was on this huge growth trajectory just to grow the college as aggressively as possible, which is a positive thing, but it also has negatives, right? But overall, I think the ODU of today was different than the ODU of 10 years ago. And the ODU of 10 years from now is going to be totally different than what we have today.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, shifting gears a little bit, back to your story. And so for you, I know, of course, that you had served at, numerous different capacities in in leadership roles. And so, what really drove you to, to seek out those leadership roles? Was it in part because of for instance, the legal studies academy that you had been in, in high school, or were you ever in leadership roles, prior to even entering college, or like what really pushed you to make that next step?
So I think for me, a part of it is that I think there's everybody has a gift. Everybody totally has a gift. I believe that. And for me, because I felt almost compelled to do something I didn't want to do for like a year, it gave me the opportunity to be like, you know what, screw that. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And for me, because it was a passion, right? It was driven into me that I should be this way through high school, through middle school, through I worked on political campaigns, I helped out my civic league. It's just kind of what I did, right? It's like a kid that starts coding when he's 7 is pretty good at coding when he's 21, right? And so it's something that I could never shake. And so for me, it was like, oh, here's an opportunity to do something. Let's go fight it out, right? I don't mind getting into arguments. I don't mind competing with you at any level. I don't mind losing, right? That's a big part of life is people don't want to lose. Losing is the greatest thing you can ever do, right? I mean, the only way you get better at baseball is you start swinging that bat and you start throwing the ball. And eventually, either you're going to hit them or you're going to miss them. But for me, it was like one of those things where it was like, this is what I'm meant to do in life. And so I was just really motivated to see what I could do and help out.
Yeah, and I definitely want to, to add on to that discussion as well. And so, since you mentioned that, even in the years prior, from middle school to high school and so on, that, that of course you've been active in your, community and working on campaigns. Is what initially drove that, into you as a, little bit of a younger person back then?
Yeah, I'd say for me, a large percentage of the drive just came from the fact that I was interested in policy making and seeking like policy decisions and politics and government and civil service. And not all of it is attractive, right? Not all of it, and really none of it is kind of like quote unquote fun, what we define as fun, right? Like this is fun. Knocking doors for a political campaign is not fun. But what attracted me to it is this idea that one kid, right, knocking doors in some neighborhood in the middle of Virginia Beach or Chesapeake or Portsmouth could have the ability to sway an election. Because nobody thinks in that types of magnitude, right? That this one singular kid, this one person, whether or not you're a guy or girl or whatever, right? You're knocking doors for 7 hours in the Virginia heat, that you could somehow convince enough people to vote for a candidate that you work for that could sway the tide of a Virginia election or a national election or whatever it may be. We don't think in that terms of magnitude because I think our minds, a lot of people suppress our minds, right? It's like focus on yourself, focus on the little impacts that you can make. You can make large impacts, but it has to be in places where large magnitude occurs, right?
Yeah, yeah, is completely true, and I think that what you said though, just truly speaks to also like the not just the power of voting, but the impact that one person can make sometimes, and sometimes that really is all the difference.
I would say, okay, I think one thing that we have totally wrong is okay. I read a lot of books, right? So whether or not we're going to read the biography of Bobby Kennedy, who's the Attorney General under John F. Kennedy, or I have some about Admiral Nimitz, President Trump, a bunch about private equity and different political leaders and military leaders. What you realize is that sometimes we get too caught up in this level of comfort. People that move the needle forward usually have unpopular opinions or not necessarily like comfortable opinions, right? So if you've seen in the past 2, 3, 4 decades, the people that actually win elections are people that are quite aggressive, right? And for me, it's like I always had this personality that was like very persistent, very aggressive, very kind of like I had to do something in life, right? I had to be moving, I had to be asking people. So much so, and we'll get to this later. I've always been that person where like you're like, hey, do you want to help me out? Well, I think I emailed you, hey, would you like to help out with this website that I'm building? And it's like that nature of always asking for help and always asking for opinions is just who I am, right? And I think that's very consistent with people in these industries. They're always doing something, right? To learn more, to get better, to do more.
Yeah, that is, yeah, so true. And yeah, and I feel like sometimes too that it's like you not only, at least in my opinion, is that you not only have to, present, the opinion, but you also have to be able to communicate it and have other people, understand why should we be listening to you? There's so many people to listen to. Why you?
Yeah. And I think when it comes to something like, I don't know, the Joe Rogan experience, that's a great example of a podcast that people don't even know how long, and you know how long it took for him to get off the ground. He did it for 7 years without a single sponsorship, starting in what, 2000, I think 2007, 2008. It was like pre-recession, right at the recession. Joe Rogan starts his podcast. A lot of life is that decade or that half decade of getting pretty much no real significant momentum up until a breaking point, right? And so for like the stuff like politics, a lot of it is knocking on 500, 600, 700 doors and only getting 3 or 4 responses. Because guess what? People peep outside their window and they're like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to stay at home and relax, which is fair. And so one thing that it teaches you, right? This nurturing of being resilient in anything that you do. Because I'm sure you email people all the time that say, no, I don't want to go on your podcast, right? And I talk to a lot of people that say, no, I don't want to use your website. That's a good thing. Those no's are building your resilience and your tolerance to the world. And so you're only just going to get better.
Yeah, that is so true. And even sometimes, even just going outside your comfort zone as well. I mean, like for me, like if you had told me that I was going to be, doing this podcast with, over 326 episodes now, you know, it's like, why would I do that? It's like, yeah, my personality is very much a reserved introvert, but sometimes it's just getting outside of your comfort zone, and that doesn't always mean necessarily changing who you are. Sometimes it's just more so just adjusting a little bit.
That's a good point that you mentioned, not necessarily changing who you are. And that's maybe something I've struggled with, right? Is that fine balance between who am I, right? Is like that's a very, and specifically when you're talking about kind of like you're young. Brandon, I don't know how old you are. I think probably 22, maybe
21.
22. 21. I'm 20. Right? About to actually, I'm still 19. I turned 20 in a month. You talk about, okay, how am I being changed by the environment around me, right? And there's a lot of times where maybe I've said something or I've worked in a certain way or I've done certain things where I'm like, this is not in line with who I am as an individual. And that's really easy to do because this world is very manipulative, right? By nature, right? It changes you. The people that you surround yourself change you. The environment that you're around changes you. And so for me, was always making sure that yes, I'm motivated for this goal, but I have to also understand that if I don't get this goal, it's not who I am, right? Because that's a dangerous game. Because if you define your entire existence by defining yourself by this goal, and for some reason, because life is a game of a lot of it is chance, you don't get there, oh man, you're gonna have a rough life, right? And so be comfortable with the moment. Enjoy these moments that we have here. Enjoy the fact that the beauty of life is in its simplicity. So I think that was one thing I had to adjust with is that even though I want it all now, and I have all these plaques about stuff I've done and all these awards, it's cool, right? Like it's cool to have the award. It's nice to go on LinkedIn, and I appreciate you liking my post. Thank you very much. It's cool to post on LinkedIn, right? But that's not the reality of the situation. What mattered is the fact that on that plaque or the awards that you get are the years that you put in the work. And for me, that's been like the largest learning process, but it's paid off. Like I'm mentally in a better position now than I was a few years ago.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you appreciate that learning process as well. And speaking of just a few years ago, yeah, I know that of course that you had run for the ODU student government, and how was that process? For you, not just running for the position, but then also doing that for I believe a year.
So when I believe you're talking about the Speaker of the ODU
Correct.
Senate. Yeah, so the Speaker of the ODU Senate, really kind of just like the normal central focus of what I'm used to doing, which is talking to people, saying, hey, how are you, this, that. My name's Kay. I'm trying to run to be the student representative, or sorry, Speaker of the ODU Senate, getting my tenures and positions mixed up here a bit. And I want to tell you what I'm running on, right? And then 1, 2, 3, jot down. And then if they have any questions, ask them questions or answer their questions. But the process of running is actually the easiest part, right? That's the easy part because it's only 4 weeks of running and you're talking to people and you get people to vote for you. It's the doing the job that's the hard part, right? And so it was doing the meetings and working with Zaria and Raekwon Griffin and a bunch of the team members at the SGA and understanding the nature and relationships of your team members. Everybody thinks they're going to get a job and automatically know everything sometimes. At least that's how my mind works. Not true. I think I learned how the job works when I left the job, right? Like I learned everything after the job was done. But yeah, that's kind of the process itself. Is you have this expectation of how being the speaker of the ODU Senate would be, that it would all be chop, chop, quick, this, that. And then you're like, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be, right? Like trying to get people to show up for student government association meetings and trying to get traction on Instagram posts. It's something where I was like, okay, you have to be able to maintain your sense of reality or else you're always going to be disappointed.
Yeah, that is, I mean, just such a important and I mean, and fair point to that because I even think for myself, like you're mentioning the difference between like even just the running and actually being in the position is, I'm sure as you would know, like are two very different things because in one hand you have to get everyone to I mean to want you and tell them about everything that you're going to do, but you're not in the position yet. You don't know at the time what the position holds, and then when you get into it, like how was it for you trying to follow through with what you had I mean promised and wanted to do in the position?
So one thing that I've realized very quickly, like just very kind of like very like low level, working on political campaigns, working for just kind of myself in the domain of working for ODU and for the student body, there are promises that you make that you realize that you cannot live up to. And those are not great feelings, right? Whether or not it's, hey, I think I can improve parking at ODU. Never promise anybody you can improve parking at ODU. That is out of your control. That's out of everybody's control. Nobody knows really. And then there's promises that you can keep, right? So let's say it's changing a syllabus in an engineering class to change certain pronouns that didn't exist, right? So making a syllabus more inclusive or allocating certain funds to people that maybe missed the deadline. You realize that the importance of a job is not in the promises, like the extreme promises that you make, right? I'm gonna build this much infrastructure. I'm gonna fund this much. It's the small interactions that you have with students on a day-to-day basis, right? So when it's a student emailing you about an issue, it's how quickly can you respond to that issue and get them the right resources. That is the importance of your job. You are a liaison as a student government association between the students, the bureaucracy of Old Dominion, and you, right? You're a connecting point. The promises that you make, they do matter, right? Because your word matters. There's certain promises that an 18-year-old makes that they cannot keep, realistically speaking. And then if there's things that you can do, then you go through the process of writing the legislation, showing it to C's or showing it to SET, and then attempting at your best to try to promote these different types of maybe it's groups or organizations or fundings or initiatives. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'd say the greatest thing that you can realize is that life is made in those small interactions that you have. They're not made in the big moments, they're made in the small ones.
Yeah, and I completely get what you're saying too. Because even like I think about for myself, having recently commenced for the advanced degree ceremony, is that as much as the pomp and circumstance is all nice, and it's the symbolic representation of the end of your time. In my case, for my graduate studies, it's like, well, it doesn't quite end there in the sense of it's like maybe that moment was turning off that final class. Maybe the moment was, turning in the final paper. But in the sense of sometimes it's the small things and not the big ceremonious ones that really, make the difference to you.
No, and I think when you look back, like you look back at your time and you say, what was the best part of physics 111, right? And I don't know the classes you took. I'm pretty sure you had to take either public speaking or some type of communications classes. The best part of public speaking or physics 111 was not the grade. It was, I'll be honest, it was never the grade. Grades are kind of, I'll be honest, meaningless. But it was the fact that in physics 111 we had these little cannonball shooters and we used to shoot them at each other. We like face them and just start firing them like you're on a Navy ship. Or it was the fact that in public speaking I got a 99 on a project because I eloquently designed the speech in a certain way. Or the fact that in a certain English class, I pour my heart and soul into an essay about a topic that I really like, and it did well, and I performed in front of the class and I talked about it. Those are the moments that matter. The quantitative stuff, yes, maybe it does matter, right? It matters that you pass your math classes. We're not saying that it doesn't. But I'm saying that as a human, the things that matter are not those quantitative metrics. It's the kind of the experiences that you have. And a lot of them are the smaller things that in the moment you don't realize matter, but they do.
Yeah, that is so true. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's just so important. I mean, to even stress that point because I feel like sometimes I don't know. It's one of the things where as much as, you just love the big momentous occasion or that final thing, like you said, it's just that those small things sometimes that, you're going to remember the most, build upon the most. And out of curiosity, is there any memory for you, like, whether during your time at ODU or beforehand, that you didn't think was important at the time, but helped build you to where you are now?
That's a good segue, by the way. That's a top quality. I can tell you've been doing this for 326 episodes. That was a solid segue. For me, yeah, there was a moment where I'll be a 65-year-old graduate student, PhD, 65-year-old graduate PhD student. So that's another example of how unique ODU is. Other schools usually don't have 65-year-old graduate PhD students. Came to the SGA office complaining about trying to print a certain poster paper, right? Now I'm honest. I'm going to be honest with you, Brandon. We had no idea what she was talking about. No idea. It was like you're talking to two different generations. I'm speaking one lingo. She isn't, right? And this is the importance of the Student Government Association. We do not have the resources directly to solve her problem. That does not mean we stop trying to solve your problem. So what do I do? Me and Keith Ferguson, I don't remember if you remember Keith Ferguson, we walk her all the way to the arts building on the other side of campus from the SGA office. And you know where the arts building is, the one that's all the way in the corner. If you walk any further, you're pretty much off campus. And we say, hey, this is this lady, or let's call her Clarissa. This is Clarissa. She really needs a poster board for her class to present in front of a PhD panel. Do you guys have it? And they go, no, we don't. And we're like, great. Okay, this is amazing. Nobody knows where this PhD poster board is. And at the end of it, she says, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to go email the professor. The professor can figure it out. But she says, I've been trying to find this poster forever, and you are the only people that actually took the time to help me. And for me, in my mind, I thought like the only things that matter are the accomplishments, are the deadlines, are the goals. If you're not meeting them, you're not doing well. And that's not necessarily true. Because first of all, you could be measuring the wrong things in life, right? Who cares how many bills you pass if nobody ever reads them and nobody really ever cares what they're about? But when somebody like a Clarissa, who's a very unique student at Old Dominion, he comes to like someone like me and Keith and says, thank you for taking the time to help me. Well, shoot, like that's something where you're like, maybe I did do something today. It wasn't quantitative. You can't measure stuff like that. But it's a small moment where she talks to us and she says, I know you and Keith will both be great leaders because you took the time to help someone that you didn't have to, right? Because in that situation, we'd be like, just go walk to the art building, right? Like you just do that. And for me, that was a moment that I think I'll always remember. You know, it's one of those moments where it's kind of ingrained. It's indelibly stained in my mind because it reminded me that not everything has to be measured. Not everything has to be calculated. And that's a good thing to understand.
Yeah, and I certainly, I mean, very much appreciate that value. I mean, in you because, like you said, not everyone would be willing to do that, and especially from what they said is that you all were the first ones to even, I mean, to take action, beyond just the sorry, I can't help you, but I'm just glad that you were able to do that. And how was it? I mean, transitioning. I mean, even from your role as a speaker over to the student representative for the board of visitors.
I would say that the greatest kind of difference between the roles is that with the student representative position, you're kind of like an entrepreneur to some degree. Like you pretty much make your own schedule, right? With the SGI, I had a timeline. I had to show up every Tuesday from 3 to 4. I had my designated office hours. I had dates where I had to put in certain deliverables for the bills that we were writing or what the agenda looked like or what work we're doing when it comes to the budget. Student representative position is not that. My only job really is to just talk in front of the board for 2 minutes out of the 4 meetings a year. A total of 8 minutes of talking is my entire job. There's a lot of people that's kind of all they do, right? That really the only thing that they did was just advise the board. That's not a wrong way to do the job. It's just a different way to do it. For me, I wanted to kind of get more involved in the substantive matter. So whether or not it was working with the ODU food pantry, right? Or working to get some initiatives done on the side of Monarchs Give Back, which is where the students and the faculty and the administration donate canned food items to then be donated to Norfolk Public Schools. That was kind of what I liked to do, mostly because I'll be honest, one of the things that I always like to do is be like, hey, I helped out with this. Like that's kind of a quality of who I am. That's I don't think I'll ever get it out of me. But two, because it's like I didn't see much benefit in doing a job that was just talking for 2 minutes 4 times a year. Like I thought, if I am the student representative, I might as well represent the students as best as possible. And so there was a difference. I think one allowed you to kind of take more creativity in the place, and one is more bureaucratic in nature, which is the speakership. So any students that really want to do both roles understand that they're entirely different. Entirely different. They're both ODU related, but you have to kind of switch your ideas and perspectives. One, I think you have to be more of a team player, which is the speakership. The other one, you're still in a team. You're still under siege in the office of the president, but you have this ability to kind of shape the world around you that the other position doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean that just makes, like I said, perfect sense. And I like that you worked to go above and beyond what was just, required. And out of curiosity, like when you got the seat for, student representative, that did you know, like, I guess the true ins and outs, and and what was required of you and what wasn't? Or did it come, like, did you know about that, or was it more of a shock? It's like, really, just, speaking for these 8 minutes?
So for me, before I got the role, I went on LinkedIn and I cold texted Lillian Rojas, who was the student representative to the University of Virginia's Board of Visitors. So it's like, like you don't get any more prestigious than that, really. And so I asked her, I was like, what do you do? Like, because I really asked her, just what do you do? She says, for her big focus was pick something that matters to you and the students and carry that as a primary goal. For me, it was food insecurity, right? Food insecurity was a huge issue for me. And I think I tried my best. Don't need any congratulations, pat on the backs. I tried my best. Whether or not it was enough, other people can judge me on, because I don't think you can fairly judge yourself. Um, I know, speaking with Raekwon Griffin, the next student representative to the Board of Visitors, I think he's very concerned about different issues. And that's a good thing, because if you're not passionate about the issues that you're advocating for, the likelihood that you're going to be effective in the job is 0 to none, right? It's very slim. So I think every student representative, you can decide to choose the same thing as the last person. My idea came from Antra Patel, right? So Antra Patel gave me the idea for the food pantry. She said, "Kay, I need help with this. These people really need help. We need to support these initiatives." And so, as long as the work that you're doing is coming from a place of sincerity, of drive, of passion and ambition, you're going to do a great job in the role. But I think you need to do something that you're interested in doing most of all.
Yeah, I mean, I just really, like I said, just admire like the depth that you're speaking about this, and yeah, and also that, like you said, that you tried your best, whether it's enough or not. I like that you sort of left that to interpretation, but that you're still, like I said, working to do your best, and I mean that's just truly commendable there. And so before I ask the next question, I did actually want to circle back, since you mentioned of course the incoming, I guess now current order of the positions, that did you work to offer any piece of advice or transition or whatever the case may be into the next office holder?
Yeah, I mean, in that in that case, like every president in U.S. history always, usually, customarily has to write a letter by tradition, not by law, to the next incoming president. And so for me, Melanie Graham, who works as the special projects director in the C's office, she said, Kay, it'd be great if you could write a letter to Raekwon Griffin. And I've known Ray for like 2 years now. Knew him a little bit also, I believe, in high school, because he did a lot of leadership workshop work. And so one thing is, Ray was one of those people that, there's certain people in this world, Brandon, you can tell would just do an amazing job for certain things. He was that guy, right? So the minute he went in front of the board, I had a feeling, like a very good feeling, that was like, the board is going to pick him. He's great for the position. For the letter that I wrote him, I don't want to disclose too much, but what I can disclose is I had very simple advice. I said, one is focus on a primary goal, primary objective, because primary objectives, it's hard to go in front of a board and say, hey, I can do this work, and then realize that you have to inform the board again about your project in like 2 months. So your timeline is so condensed that the only way you can show continuity is by picking a primary goal. And then the second piece of advice was have fun. I said, just have fun. Because one thing is, you're in a room with a lot of seriously educated and a lot of them incredibly wealthy people, but that doesn't make them any less human or more human. And so the ability to converse, have good conversation, talk, communicate, banter, right, joke around, these are important qualities, right? These are what most boards do anywhere, right? People are try to be friends with the people you work with. And so that was kind of the advice I gave him, but I really don't think he needs it. He's amazing at what he does.
Well, I certainly love that. I mean, that you add in that sentiment, and yeah, I mean, and those encouraging words as well. And of course, I know that in your role as student rep as well, that that you of course attended the commencement ceremonies to end out the academic year. So how was that for you, being able to see everyone's like big day as one of your final, I'm sure, acts of your role?
That is just gonna put my charger in really quickly. Hold on, give me 1 second, and I'll answer your question. Um, that was probably, I would say, very. It was moving. It was moving more than anything. It's moving because one is I had always kind of like this back and forth relationship with ODU as to whether or not I was going to stay. And then when I made the decision that I was going to leave, I got into the University of Virginia, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the University of Miami, and the University of Texas. So I had the options to leave. I had the opportunities to leave. But it was a sense of leaving that came from gratitude and not so much hostility. And you really feel that because you look at a group of like probably 3,000 students and all their family. And it kind of, it's not necessarily emotional, but it's moving in the sense that you look at that and you're like, man, like these people are great. Like these were my friends, right? Like a lot of them I did know. Probably out of that graduating 3,000, I knew some of them or most of them probably to maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 casually or in person. And so when you watch something like that and you watch them get their degrees and you watch them with their families, it humanizes the experience that, yes, this is a college. Yes, it's transactional in so much that I give you money and you give me an education, but it's more to that, right? It's about a community. It's about the friendships. It's about the professors and the people that you meet and the things that you do and the late night study sessions and the pizzas that you get together from Del Vecchio's and maybe going to Subway and getting the wrong order because sometimes that happens. But that's what life was about, right? And so if you're always looking at it, right, you could go to the ODU graduation and be like, well, it's just a normal commencement, right? Or you could go back and look at it and be like, wow, like this is a mind-blowing and kind of like life-altering experience for these kids who, let's be honest, without ODU, a lot of these kids aren't going to college. Without the affordability, without the accessibility, without the scholarship recipiency, a lot of these people got the chance to become truly educated because ODU does an amazing job. And so when you look at that, you're like, dang, right? Like that hits at a different level. And I previously said that it wasn't emotional. I'm going to take that back. It's very emotional. And so for me, it was one of those things that I think is going to humble me to my core forever. I don't think it'll ever change that. So yeah, that's a very long-winded explanation, but it's just what I was feeling and what's the truth.
Well, I certainly love, I mean, that it was moving and, yeah, admittedly, a little emotional, for you. And I love that you highlight, I mean, even just the affordability of the university, and that it's able to sort of provide those opportunities to people who sometimes just, may not have been able to have it, otherwise. Yeah, but I do have to, to shift a little bit in asking, so how was it, for you, I guess, in the transition of, leaving your role as, for all intents and purposes, the student representative of the whole university, but then to decide to go to a different university?
This is a great question. It's a really great question. It's almost like being, I would say, like an executive of Apple and then leaving to go be working at Samsung. Like that's kind of like very much the similar. Some people call it betrayal. I don't think it's that in that domain. One thing is it's because it's what you want out of life, right? I think ODU has done a fantastic job of growing its educational infrastructure, but the one thing that came with that is that there are certain majors that get more attention than others. And because I wanted to be a lawyer, I'm kind of in the domain of economics, political science, anthropology, sociology, all these other kind of liberal arts based subjects. And ODU, I think, is doing phenomenally well in other departments. That's not to say the other ones aren't strong, but I think a lot of focus is shifted on, okay, let's do a lot of engineering work, cybersecurity work, computer science work. Let's go work with the Port of Virginia to figure out how unmanned systems can assist with certain port clearing capacities. And then you go to school like UVA and you're like, oh, everybody here is like writing about poetry and legal arguments. And in that sense, it was a weird shift. It was not the most comfortable thing to do, to tell some of these administrators, tell these faculty members, and tell the board members who appointed me that I'm going somewhere else. Because one is, they put trust in you, they put faith in you. But at the end of it, I saw that a lot of them were incredibly happy for me. A lot of them were incredibly happy because one thing is, because I did my best as the student representative. I'm not going to say I did good, but I tried my best. They know that my intentions were pure, right? That I did the job and I tried to do it my best, right? Like, you're on a team, you can be on a team. That's what it is, right? You're on this massive team, whether or not you're the quarterback or the running back. Play every single touch of the ball like it's your last. And that's what I tried to do. And when you consistently do that, people can't be upset with you because they know you put your heart in this game every single day. And so when I told them I was leaving to go to UVA, I gave them a very well justified answer. I'll probably give you the same answer. UVA pretty much makes lawyers. They make bankers. That's what they do. If anyone asks you why you go to UVA, there's a few reasons. There's some kids that go to UVA engineering, but UVA primarily is a school about banking and law. That's what it is, right? And so for me, wanting to become a corporate attorney, wanting to do civil service, wanting to go in the political world, UVA Law School is a target, right? And for me, I was really focused on, okay, I have the leadership positions. I'm going to continue to work on that, but I need to be in an environment that can really produce that top quality legal talent, that they go to the Harvard Law Schools, they go to the Yales, they go to the wonderful educational institutions that prioritize a legal education. And that was kind of pretty much the philosophy of why I left Old Dominion, and was the justification that I provided as to why I need to leave.
And so I'm actually going to, to go little bit further into this too. And so would you say that your, I believe, 2 years at ODU, do you feel like that this prepared you for entering into UVA now versus had you been at UVA the whole 4 years?
That's a really good question. That's something my mom and I always argue about. Is because my mom was kind of a motivating factor for me to go to ODU. Because my mom went to ODU, my dad went to ODU. Pretty much most of my family is a big ODU family. Probably, I'm like 10 family members strong at ODU. So big monarch group. I'd say yes, and I'll tell you a few reasons. So one thing is UVA has a big a big attitude problem that they need to fix really quickly. And the thing is everyone can kind of have issues, right? Like, everybody has some type of ego problem or some type of attitude problem. But to come from a place of humility and to live from a place of humility, I think everybody says this very common saying: humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less, right? And so I think at UVA that is an issue because there's a lot of very wealthy, affluent kids and their families who purport this reality that, it's okay to treat certain people like this, or it's okay to say certain things. And for a while, actually, I'm not going to say for a while, for most of my life, I was that way. I'm starting to shift and understand, because of the people I met at ODU, that the best way to act is just to be a good person, right? And to just treat everybody with respect and humility and kindness. That takes you much farther in life than anything else. Okay. But essentially, that process, right, of going to Old Dominion, it conditioned me to be in this kind of the sense of always seeking to help others. Whereas, like, if I went to ODU the initial 2 years, I think I would probably been more in the interest of helping myself at every opportunity and point. And also, at ODU, it was something where like I needed to prove myself, right? I needed to be like, okay, I can do these things. Where at UVA, I don't think I would have been given the opportunity just because the intense competition surrounded by those same types of opportunities. Like if I tried to go to UVA and be a student representative, I would have had it would have been a senior or like a master's student. I got it when I was a freshman, right? So obviously there's this great evolution in the fact that I was able to mature at such a larger rate because people were willing to give me confidence and responsibility. And so for that, I think I would have a different trajectory altogether. I think UVA and these like top quality students in schools, they can beat down on your confidence really quickly, right? Because whereas you were the creme de la creme at First Colonial High School, you're a nobody at UVA, right? But at ODU, I was able to show, I was like, yes, I can do these things. Yes, I can go in front of the president of the school and the rector and show them why we need to fund the ODU Monarch Pantry. So I'm going to say confidently, I would not be in the amazing position I am today without Old Dominion University, for sure. Absolutely.
I absolutely love that. And since you did mention a little bit in passing, would you ever, if it comes up, would you ever consider being the student representative for UVA?
So me and my mom talk about this actually a lot too, because if I went to UVA law school, I would also be in the UVA graduate school program. So I'd have the ability to do that as well. So essentially I'm going to be in school until I'm 25. So that sounds wonderful. No, but that's life, right? And I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no is because I think it's time now for me to figure out, okay, what is it that you want to do with your life? I've been the student representative once. It's not that I don't want to do it again. I'd love to do it again, but I have to start focusing on, the legal life that I'm going to live, right? Whether or not that is getting involved in the Peace Corps, right? Or the Army Corps of Engineers, or working to be a federal prosecutor or defender. I think when you get to that level of your career, you have to become, I don't want to say hyper focused, but you have to get really serious about where you want to go in life. Because the field of competition in this world is drastically harder than it was 2 decades ago, and 4 decades before that, and 8 decades before that. So if you want to go somewhere, you have to work harder now than you did before. You have to be more determined now than you did before. And because of that, I need to really focus on those extracurriculars that I like, right? Like that are just about the things that I love, whether or not it's mock trial, or I took an acting class at ODU. I freaking loved it. It was amazing. Or it's a law review if I just want to do writing or poetry. I think for me, that's probably a greater evolution on a personal note for myself than just trying to stack a resume with as many impressive things, which are still valid. But I think it's just a situational thing. I've done it once. I loved doing it. It's a great position. If anybody wants kind of advice on it, I'd be happy to share more. But for now, I think I'm ready to take the next phase in life, which is really hyper focused on my career and my occupation in civil service.
I love that. And so I do have to ask, because I know you're still, of course, as you just mentioned, working to figure out, what exactly is, next for you in your future career. But if you had to pick right now, I mean, like, what direction do you think you'd at least want to go in?
I would say probably very confidently, I'd say that I'd work in corporate or some type of like normal occupation for anywhere from, let's say I graduate law school at 25, right? Let's do a timeline. Timelines are really fun. Um, I would like to, have like my life together before I start chasing dreams. Or maybe I should start chasing dreams before my life's together, right? You can make an argument for both. But I would probably work just a very either normal job, like do the Peace Corps, go to foreign countries and kind of work at the legal logistics of maybe certain things, how they work, possibly join the JAG Corps right through the U.S. Department of Navy, or work in corporate law. It just really depends on the feeling once I come out of law school, right? Because I'll also have the ability to do internships. Within 5 to 10 years of making like a solid occupation, a living, and a name for myself, I would love to run for like a congressional position, or I'd love to run for state senate or for anything higher, right? But you have to condition yourself to that level. But yeah, I think I do pretty well, right? I think I try to understand as much as possible. I try to learn. I try to the rate of learning for me is what matters. How much can I learn and how quickly can I learn it? Right now, though, because my time is pretty cheap, I'm enjoying my life very much. So I'll probably worry about those problems when I get to them. But yeah, I'd say I'm really kind of interested in everything, whether or not it's the federal government, whether or not it's private practice, whether or not it's mergers and acquisitions, it's private credit, it's banking, whatever it may be. I think I could do it well. I think it's just whatever the moment moves you to do is what you're going to have to do.
Yeah, I mean that is just so true, and I liked how you said too that now that where you are right now, of course, where you're sort of in that transitional period between two different universities and everything. How are you spending this summer?
So that's a great question. So I would adequately like to be studying for my LSATs so I can get into a fantastic law school. So right now my schedule works out to where I study for my LSATs about 10 to 15, 10 to 20 hours a week. But then for the majority of my time, I'm focusing a lot of it on working at a children's shelter in Virginia Beach. So I work, have to get the paperwork back soon, but I'm supposed to start working next week at the Cabrini shelter, which is a housing shelter for migrant children who crossed the border and who were left without their parents. So kind of teaching them English. My Spanish isn't great, but I can understand a fair amount of it. I took way too much of it in high school and college, but I guess it's coming handy now. But yeah, so that's how I'll spend about 30 to 40 hours a week of my time. And then the rest, I think, there's an old saying that you should save your time while it's cheap, right? So I think as you grow older, your responsibilities only get larger and larger. So having the simplicity to hang out with friends, go golfing, go to the beach, I think you have to enjoy that, right? Like, I don't think anybody should. I mean, unless it's your dream. Like, if you want to be Mark Zuckerberg, go for it. Start an internet startup right now. But I think right now you realize you're probably going to go live to 110, right? So take your time, chillax. You don't have to get it all done tomorrow. So for me, I think it's just going to be a normal teenage summer. Work a little bit, relax a little bit, enjoy myself, spend time with my family. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I love that. And yeah, certainly as a recent graduate, it's like I know everyone's been asking, it's like, what's next? What's next? Is it, are you going straight for that PhD or are you going to, go for that dream job? It's like I am taking my summer right now as probably the last summer before working world, and it's like I'm relaxing. I want to continue, having little adventures for myself and continue, meeting amazing people like yourself and reconnecting with friends. Because I mean, if you have any time to do it, why not now?
No, and that's a great point. And the reason that is because you look back at your life and you will never say, and well, this is one thing that's really great. Brandon, you know who Jerry Seinfeld is, the comedian? So Jerry Seinfeld gave the commencement at Duke. He did an amazing job giving the commencement at Duke University. And why he said doing things that you love are so important is because when you look back, you should be doing everything that you love, right? You should look back and say, I worked at a place that I loved. I spent time with people that I loved. I ate at restaurants and I experienced things that I absolutely loved. And so looking back at it, right? You're 21. You said you're 21. I'm 19. You don't want to look back and be like, I was so hyper focused on building something that I really didn't fall in love with, right? But you will look back and say, I really enjoyed spending that time with Brandon on his podcast, or going to have lunch with somebody a week from now who I really cared about, was a good friend, or playing tennis with my buddy Shane. Those are the things you look back on and say, that is a full life, right? And I think that's what our generation is starting to understand better than others, is that life is meant to be lived now, not when you're 65 and you just got your Social Security and your Roth IRA payments, right?
But I mean, I just couldn't agree more with that. And even though we are going to begin to wrap up our discussion, I do have to ask too. So outside of just your offices that you've held, the universities that you're attending, what do you like doing in your spare time when you have any? Because I don't know if you do.
No, I do. I do have spare time. I actually have a significant amount of spare time that I'm trying to fill right now. I'm one of those people. It's like if it's not filled, I have a feeling that it should get filled. You know what I mean? It's like I have this knack for it. So I think about it like this: we finished valediction exercises about 2 weeks ago, right? So it was the fourth. I think it was the fourth, right? So we finished 2 days ago. It's the 19th. So it's been about 2 weeks and a day. So in these 2 weeks, I've pretty much done kind of what I've been doing. So building the website, that's a personal project, right? I won a small award from ODU to build that. Now, whether or not that scales or it doesn't, it's been an amazing learning opportunity. That's one thing I'm also learning about life. Personal projects that don't become anything are not failures, they're teaching experiences, right? Whether or not you do this podcast until you're 75 or you quit in 2 months does not matter. You still learn so much. I mean, you learn how to use Riverside, which is not easy to do. And so for me, it's just been working on kind of like one thing, reconnecting with my family, because I will not be coming back to Virginia Beach that often when I'm in Charlottesville, because I have to take a lot of classes just to graduate on time. But yeah, so reconnecting with family, just trying to make sure that I'm trying to read more. I think reading is important, so trying to get a little more educated. And then yeah, now just prepping for my LSATs, building the website, and going to start working at the Cabrini shelter probably in about a week or so. And yeah, that's gonna be the summer. I'm pretty excited. And then happy Memorial Day weekend. It's coming up in about 10 days, and that should be really fun.
Yeah, and definitely, I hope that I mean that you spend this time well, and yeah, and because I'm just so excited to see like what you're going to, I mean, do and continue to do, going forward, and I'm just can't wait to see what the future has to hold to you for you, and let's say, and before, like I said, I get you know into our final thoughts. Since you did mention your website, did you want to share a little bit about that while we're speaking?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, the idea came to me and my friend Ben Nelson, who also goes to Old Dominion University, and we were just talking about this central content platform where essentially you could do whatever you really wanted and host the content that you wanted from an external resource that wasn't YouTube. Because a part of me feels like there's a huge fragmentation in your content. Brandon, I know you use YouTube Shorts pretty frequently to post a lot of your content, and you have a good amount of traction. But essentially, if you kind of wanted your own just content page, whether or not it was an article that you wrote, or it was a video that you posted, or an old live stream, or a podcast, or an audio recording, or music that you want to upload, it could all be aggregated in one space for a person to be like, oh, this is Brandon K. Hedgepeth. This is his podcast. This is an article that he wrote about podcasting. This is some information about him, his contact information. And maybe in other models and other iterations, we could do a messaging board where people could message you in real time about certain ideas or projects that they could work on. So it's almost kind of like this affiliate content website that would be yours, hosted through our platform. So imagine just kind of like your own little page where you could pretty much do a lot of the things that you would normally do on other softwares on our site. And that's just a rundown. It's always a work in progress, like everything in life. But we've been doing it for about 2 months now. Yesterday, we had the largest amount of traffic. We had 567 people visit the site. So that was fun. That was cool. I'll be honest, like most things in life, nobody knows what they're doing. We're just kind of riding the wave out. But just going to continue to progress. And Brandon, if you'd love to join the website, if you want to post videos and post your podcast, we'll have audio up in a week. So if you want to post an old podcast, we can do that too. But yeah, it's been some fun little side project, just trying to learn as much as possible.
Oh yeah, yeah, Les. I'm just so excited for you, and so yeah. In addition to all of the, of course, the the leadership stuff that you're doing, your studies, that you're somewhat of a little entrepreneur yourself as well.
I think entrepreneurship is interesting because I think they say the greatest book about entrepreneurship is just doing it, right? Like it's like you learn by doing, right? Like nobody can teach you how to do a lot of this stuff, but doing it does teach you, right? And every small, maybe the likelihood that this little side personal project may fail, very high. I'm not going to say it is high, but very high. But through that failure, I learned kind of how to get a little better every day, maybe every month, every year. And so maybe there's a project that I do start that actually does become something, right? And that's what you're chasing, right? A lot of life is chasing a dream that you may or may not get to, but you got to chase it, right? Like there's no point in living without chasing things.
Yeah, I just couldn't agree more with that, and and yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm just so so thrilled to see what's to come. But I did want to ask as we are closing out. So I know we've just had just such a fun discussion, and I think just I mean we just hit so much. But what would you say is the importance of being able to share your story?
I'd say the importance of sharing my story, one from the perspective of an individual who shifted what he wanted out of life, is understanding that nobody has it figured out. Nobody. I mean, everybody from Jeff Bezos to the person that sells you hot dogs from the street vendor, nobody has it figured out. Some people are more calculated than others, but to the extent that as long as you're living the life that you want to live, that is success. right? So if that hot dog vendor on the street loves what he does more than anything, he can provide for himself and his family. Or same thing with Jeff Bezos, success. That's do not fall into this trap that the only way you can become successful is by tracing or by chasing a dream that isn't yours, right? Going to work at a company that you hate isn't the dream. That's a nightmare, right? So do what you love. And as cliche as it is, it will probably make you feel more fulfilled in life than anything else.
That is just so true. And yeah, and speaking of, like I said, following your dreams, to shift a little bit. So if anyone wants to follow, you online and continue following everything that you are doing, where are the best places for them to potentially find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, you can find me at maybe, I put maybe K Vermani on Instagram. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's just going to be Keshav, and then it's going to be in parentheses K Vermani. And I do not have an account on anything else. And if you want to email me, it's going to be kv61435 at gmail.com. I'm working to get a better email because that sounds like a bot email. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I definitely hope that, like I said, that you're able to, to have people, tuning in to, of course, to your accounts. And out of curiosity, since you did mention your website, are you able to share, your website as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been multiple iterations and pivots. For the time being, it's the URL is going to be trendy. So trendy with two Y's dot news. And if you go to the website, you can find just a normal homepage with articles posted. And then if you click down on the other tabs, you can see videos and you can see how to create your own content. You can log in with Google. We've made that the primary way to log in. It's just easier for everybody. And you can just start writing your own content or uploading your own videos. There's always some bugs and kinks that we're working on, but it should be a really, really fun experience for you or any of your friends that want to use it.
Well, that's awesome. And Les, I'm just so excited to see, that, grow and prosper. But last but certainly not least, I did want to say, so like I said, we've just had just such a great conversation, and I would allow for you to go ahead and, close it out with whether it be an inspirational thought, life lesson, or whatever the case may be. The floor is all yours, Kay.
I would say that the most important thing that I can tell you is that if you're going to live your life, make sure that it's yours. Don't chase things unnecessarily that don't make sense. Make sure that you're spending time with people that you love and that care about you and that you care about. And then also always look to self-improve, whether or not it's in your personal health, it's in side projects or side hustles that you're working on. If it's reading more books, try to do a little better every day and you'll likely get to the place you want to get to. And the last piece of advice is people underestimate what they can do in a decade and overestimate what they can do in a year. So realize if you want to go somewhere fast in life, go slow. Go slow. Take your time.
I love that. And I mean, it's just such a fitting way to close this episode. Like I said, thank you so much, like I said, for coming on and for speaking with us. And definitely keep me updated with all of your amazing things that you're going to do in the future. And best of luck at UVA.
I appreciate it, my friend. Take care.
Yeah, you as well. For those tuning in, thank you so much, as always, for tuning into the Tansson Talk Show. I always appreciate your support. Continue tuning into the summer season every week as we continue on our mission to bring people together. See you next time. Take care.